superheroes were not made for endings. Having been born in monthly comic books, they are serialized and static by nature. They don't grow old, they don't retire, and they certainly don't die. Or if they do die, they come back to life pretty easily. The ravages of time, old age, death, these are problems that we have to deal with, not our superheroes. Our superheroes remain forever young, forever vibrant, forever in the fight. And yet, despite this, or maybe because of this, some of the most accomplished and popular and important superhero stories told in the last 30 some odd years have been stories that have imposed these qualities, these concerns on our superheroes. And now I think we can add to that list Logan, which is one of the greatest superhero films I have ever seen, and one of the most powerful, because it attempts to do that which comic book superheroes are designed to avoid, and that is to put a period at the end of the sentence instead of an ellipsis. I am spoiling nothing by telling you that this is by design, and certainly by the nature of its story, by the way it feels, by its themes, and by the feelings that it leaves you with, or at least that it left me with after I exited the theater. This is the final Wolverine story. This is the end of Wolverine's myth. This is the equivalent of the arrow being fired into the air to choose the resting place of Robin Hood. It's a film that is simultaneously the bleakest superhero movie I have ever seen. It takes place in a world that is absolutely pitiless. I mean, the most awful, shocking, violent, heartbreaking things happen in this movie to these characters. And yet, throughout all of it, and particularly at the end, amidst the shock and the sadness and the tragedy and the violence, there is this ray of hope. There is this sense that, yes, these characters inhabit a cruel and indifferent and chaotic world, but at the same time, they have it within them to struggle against it and to make it better. And even though they are subjected to just incredibly arduous trials throughout this film, they also show themselves to be capable of such courage and such nobility and such self-sacrifice that it's really difficult to call this a depressing movie. Logan is a very sad movie, but it is not a depressing movie. In a weird way, despite its very downbeat tone throughout, it's kind of uplifting. One way of understanding the film version of Wolverine is to look at him as having evolved from one Clint Eastwood persona to another. When we first meet him in the original X-Men movie, he's sort of the man with no name, the man without a past. And then he changes more into the sort of Ronin character like Eastwood played in the Dollars trilogy, which were adaptations originally of Kurosawa's samurai films, Yojimbo and Sanjuro, about literally a Ronin, a masterless samurai. And for several films, Wolverine sort of felt like that, particularly in The Wolverine, his previous solo film. That was a theme that was hit very hard in that film. And now he has reached in Logan the point where he is Clint Eastwood from Unforgiven. He is the tired old gunslinger who is dragged out of retirement for one last adventure. And Logan's persona and Jackman's performance in this movie is very Clint Eastwood, and I mean that in like the best, most complimentary way possible. There are lines of dialogue, there are looks, there are moments when Logan is interacting with the other characters where it's Clint Eastwood, like 100%. The movie, and it feels very much like a Western. And of course, one of the only major shortcomings that I can think of in the movie is that it draws some very obvious parallels to the great Western film Shane. And it's one of the things that I understand why they did it, and I appreciate what they were going for by tying it to Shane very explicitly. But it just feels really obvious. It feels like basically the movie is just telling you flatly what it's about. It's not even subtext. It just becomes text. And it doesn't need that, because you can tell what the movie's about. You can tell, the movie is accomplished enough in its own right in terms of storytelling and in terms of performances that you don't need to reference Shane so that we get what the movie's about. But other than that one relatively minor misstep, it's damn near a flawless movie. And don't let me give you the impression that it's just all a boring, tedious, depressing slog through Logan just being a sad old man. It is a rip-roaring action movie. There are 2 or 3 very elaborate action set pieces in this that George Miller would be proud of. There's a fight scene that turns into a car chase that would easily fit in a Road Warrior movie. I mean, it's really, really well done. And it does not have the problem that a lot of superhero movies have now, even relatively good superhero movies like the Avengers films or the Captain America films, where the action just feels like it's going on and on and on and on and on. Logan doesn't have that problem. It does have a lot of action, but the action is very, very creatively staged. It's super well edited, well paced, and you never feel like it's action for its own sake. The action never feels gratuitous. And the violence never feels gratuitous either, even though there is a ton of incredibly graphic violence. This is the most graphically violent superhero film I have ever seen. If you're someone who likes to see Wolverine use his claws, pop those claws and remind you why he is the best in the world at what he does, and what he does isn't very nice. This is a movie for you, because you get to see Wolverine pop those claws and go to town a few times in these 2 hours and 20 minutes or so. And it never feels gratuitous. It never feels over the top. It never feels like it doesn't have the kind of lingering pornographic glorification of violence that is prevalent in, for instance, a lot of the DC extended universe movies, Man of Steel, and Batman v Superman, where it feels like they're reveling in the violence, or there's an adolescent sort of fascination with the violence. The violence in Logan is graphic and brutal and ugly. And it's very well filmed and very well staged and just outstandingly executed in every way. But it is brutal. And I think it's supposed to be. That's part of the message of the movie. Part of what haunts Logan in the film is the violence that he has done to people. He realizes he is reaching a point in his life where, to quote another Patrick Stewart character, there are fewer days ahead than there are behind. And his past is not something that he is finding it easy to live with. But one of the fascinating things about Logan, the film, and also Logan, the character, is it's not just his violent past that he is having trouble living with. It's his past as a hero as well. He is very ambivalent about his past as an X-Man, about his past as a superhero. He's only referred to as Wolverine, I believe, once in the movie. And his response when someone addresses him as Wolverine is to sort of roll his eyes and turn away in disgust and go, "Oh, fuck you." He's not happy and comfortable with his past as a superhero. And the brilliance of the movie is that it uses that ambivalence to make Logan more heroic. Because he doesn't want to be a hero, not because he doesn't want to do good, but because he feels the weight of it. He feels the burden of it. And he knows that his life would be easier if he could just walk away. His life would be easier if he didn't have to help people, if he didn't have to step in and stand up for people, if he didn't have to use his mutant powers and his training to fight for people who aren't as able to fight for themselves against forces that they don't have the power to fight back against, yet he does. He knows that his life would be so much easier if he could just be a normal person and just have a job and not be Wolverine. But because he is a hero, because he is a good guy, Because ultimately, despite his protestations to the contrary, he does care about doing the right thing. He continually finds himself pulled back into the fight at continually higher costs to himself. Hugh Jackman is fantastic in this role. He has always been good as Wolverine from the first moment he stepped into the role amidst great scrutiny and skepticism, having been a very unproven quantity at the time. He has certainly grown into Wolverine and made that character his own over many, many films. And Logan asks more of him as an actor than any of the previous appearances as Wolverine have. This is the first time where it feels like it's much more important for Jackman to show up as an actor than as an action figure, and he just nails it. He shows us a Logan who is haunted and wounded and exhausted and yet still determined, and still fierce and still loyal and still all of the things that made us love and admire Wolverine in the previous films. It's just a really, really fantastic piece of acting from Jackman. Great work as well by Patrick Stewart, who comes back as Professor Xavier, who really does a terrific job. And again, the heaviest acting burden that I think has been placed on Patrick Stewart in the X-Men franchise, where he really is playing a version of Xavier that is a lot more complicated and has a lot more heavy emotional stuff going on in his life, in his mind, in his story than we have seen Professor X have to grapple with in the past. And again, Patrick Stewart absolutely up to the challenge, gives a tremendous, tremendous performance. A newcomer to the movies, Daphne Keane as Laura, the child who Logan and Professor X find themselves protecting, who has her own secrets and has been compared by a lot of people with good reason to the character of Eleven from Stranger Things. If you've seen Stranger Things and then you see Logan, you will make the connection between Laura and Eleven like just immediately. It's very obvious, and even her backstory is pretty much Eleven's backstory, and they're the same character type, the sort of silent, incredibly powerful child who will not be fucked with, who you do not want to get on the wrong side of, because she might look like a quiet, cute little girl, but she will end you with extreme prejudice. And Daphne Keane's performance as Laura it evokes a lot of the same things that Millie Bobby Brown's performance as Eleven does in Stranger Things. They're very similar characters and very similar performances. And again, if you want to look for something critical to say about the movie, you could say, well, Laura never quite transcends her type. She becomes a really great, well-executed example of that type of character, of the sort of fierce, fighting, formidable child character who is more than meets the eye. But she never really becomes anything else besides that. And that's not necessarily a complaint from me, because I think it's pulled off flawlessly. I didn't really find myself needing more from her. But if you want a lot more from her than just a really great execution of that type, then you might find the character a little lacking. You might find the character a little flat. The X-Men movies, from the very beginning, have always benefited from tying themselves into our real world. Just as giving Logan a final story, despite him being a serialized, static superhero character by nature, sort of grounds him in our world and allows us the indulgence of imagining that he is someone like us, that he is one of us. The X-Men movies in general have always done well to make those connections to the real world. Bryan Singer chose to open the X-Men movie franchise by showing us a young Magneto as an inmate at a concentration camp during the Holocaust. And even though from that point on, the X-Men movie and the X-Men franchise in general became much more of a typical superhero movie and a typical series of superhero movies, it has always benefited from the gravity that it won itself, that it earned itself, by reminding us that these characters, though they are fictional and though they are fantasy characters, have roots in very real, very, very real parts of our own lives and our own history. that their stories are about more than just superhero adventures, that they are about heroism, they are about alienation, they are about prejudice, they are about fighting against political and social forces that act to oppress people in our own societies. And while the themes in Logan are far more personal and less sweeping and epic and political than those themes that are present in many of the other X-Men movies, Logan nonetheless finds ways to ground itself in our real world in that same way, and it benefits greatly from those connections. There's another moment in Bryan Singer's original X-Men movie that feels like it could almost be a mission statement for Logan. And it's the moment after Wolverine has shown himself for the first time, and he's rescued Rogue from the bar where he was fighting, and they're driving away. And Rogue looks at his hand where the claws came out, and she says, "Does it hurt?" And Wolverine says, "Every time." And that is very much the Wolverine that we see in this movie. That is very much the Logan that we see in this final Wolverine film. It's unlike any superhero film I've ever seen. It is not the great big blockbuster tentpole type of superhero film that they have made. I think they've made something very different and a lot better and a lot more unexpected. They've made something that I think you can call beautiful. I think this is a beautiful movie.